who are you pitching the book to? And I probably should have a better answer. I was looking for a general reader, but I'm not sure they exist anymore. I think anyone, well, it's funny. The blurb at the top is from a friend of mine, Jacob M.F.A, who's very well published. I recommend him unreservedly. And he just says, a wry masterpiece and a must-read for anyone who has screwed up royally. So I don't know if that makes an answer to your question, but for people who are wondering, what's going on here, because this is sort of an answer, but as we discussed earlier, it's not an explanation, it's a drama. You can get stuff from this, maybe. Maybe this is partly your life. A reader is someone who's looking for an absorbing read with a sort of a jokey guy you wouldn't mind spending a few hours with.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter, the podcast where we talk to great authors. And today's a joy because not only is our author guest an amazing author with many books, his name is David, and my name is David. So right there, we're best friends because we both have the same first name. He's done way more as an author than I have ever done because I haven't even written a book yet. So you're going to get a lot of wisdom and knowledge from our guest today. And I'm excited to have him here on the show. We're even going to talk about postcards. Yep, it's going to come up in the conversation. David, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. Glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Excellent. Dave, tell everybody where you are in this great big world of ours.
I am speaking to you, well, I could say my office, but that doesn't really help you much. We live in Montclair, New Jersey. I teach at the university there, Montclair State. I've been running the creative writing program there for, about 17 years. I like Jersey. I'll talk later a bit about, how this is a Jersey novel. I grew up in New York, but North Jersey has really got something going for it.
How long have you been in North Jersey then?
About the same time that I started teaching here. I lived for years in Mississippi, where I got my first teaching job, Oxford, Mississippi, which was a great town. But eventually we jumped back over the Mason-Dixon line. And I've been in Montclair, as I say, for a long time, to the point where, I had the same issues in the South. If you grew up in New York, can you ever be anything but a damn Yankee? And I would say, sure. I lived in Mississippi for almost 20 years, longer than some of my students. So, yeah, I feel New Jersey. I think it's the people there are sort of tough and scrappy. They will tell you what they think and then some. And I appreciate that because the South was a politeness society, and that's very different.
Oh, what do you love about teaching, Dave?
I've always liked teaching. Sure, I could say there's a bit of the ham in me, but I like standing in front of a group of people. But I like all sorts of things. I like explaining things, which I think I'm good at in a sort of, I hope a lively way. I like hearing people think. I like seeing thought organized on the page, which is writing. I like a discussion. I like starting the discussion, leading it in different ways. I got a Ph.D. in literature, so I started off teaching writing and literature courses. But when I got to Ole Miss, I'd already published a bunch of stories, and I kept on publishing them, even though I was sort of supposed to be doing the criticism. I did both. I even published inaugural verse. But it got to the point where they said, look, you can teach creative writing workshops. Eventually we started an M.F.A. program there, which has been quite successful. But the idea of being in a workshop with people creating stuff, sharing it, commenting, I really appreciate that. It makes me feel, I have friends who are doctors and lawyers, and they're very useful, but I do not generally come back from a class thinking, that I wasted my time or what am I doing in this field. I'm not a romantic, but I think I'm in a helping profession.
Does your teaching style have any impact on your writing as an author?
Yeah, that's a good question. I hope so, insofar as one of the things I do as a teacher is to share what I know And it's been pointed out, I think, that the last part of a writer's education is teaching writing. Because for the first time, perhaps, you've got to, explain, why did I do that? What am I doing, in chapter 3 here? Ah, okay. I'll tell the class it's for this. And if you do this, if you, run dialogue this way, it's just going to be talking heads. So add some action sentences, and here's how it works. Um, I've always found, a nice equilibrium or maybe a dynamic between the two. Um, I'm going to take the chance here. Do not take this out of context, but a famous nasty quote by Gore Vidal. Um, I'm not sure he ever delivered any other kind of quotations. He said, teaching has ruined more writers than drink. And I think
Oh,
that's totally false, though I like the quotation. That's all.
okay. So, David, we're students coming into your class, first class of a new session with you. You're standing in front of a whole new group of students, and we're all writers. We're all at different stages of writing, but we're here signed up. You're teaching us. What is some of the introductory topics and introduction to what you're going to teach us as a teacher that would benefit the authors that are listening to our conversation?
Sure. Let me just say one other thing, which is in later weeks, we have, sessions devoted to setting, dialogue, plot and character. But the first day, in some ways, is the most important because after we, briefly get to know each other, first of all, I want to know why they're taking the course.
Right.
And what the course is a course in technique. So I want to begin by telling them, first of all, what I can't teach them, which is experience. I didn't have that, whitewater rafting trip that you had that you're going to write about. Inspiration, I can sort of inspire it, but that comes from the top of your head. Um, I teach technique, and because I don't like talking in a vacuum, even in the first session, I hand out a small piece of writing, okay? Um, Sometimes a paragraph, because I also edit a flash fiction journal called Vestal Review. And sorry, I'm constantly in the business of showing what can be done in a small space. And um, I go over it. I mean, I'm trying to think of a suitable, really short piece of fiction. Um, and I can give you one in a really short space, um, which is something like I'll make this. I mean, I'll try to quote from memory here, but um, when we came around the corner, there they were. Okay, um, two lovers hand in hand. Um, I took photos and made outlines. Joe directed the crowd, and you realize, oh my God, this is a double suicide, right? With the outline and so forth. It's not
Right.
immediately apparent from the beginning, but
Right.
this is extreme, shortening. And I'm saying it here only because I don't have recourse right now to
Yeah.
something a bit longer. But in that small moment, you've got drama. I always tell my students, this is not an essay writing class. If you're going to make a point, you've got characters. Would you please dramatize it? Put it in dialogue. Put it in action. Um, if you're going to describe, let's say, Dave Campbell was angry, which I hope you're not. You
No,
look pretty
no,
good.
I'm kidding. Yeah.
You don't have to say that. You can show Dave taking his fist and pounding it hard, on the counter. You can show an angry scene between, I'll picking on Dave, between,
Yeah.
Patricia and her son, who's just come back far too late in the evening. And in fact, there he says, I'm home. And her action is to say nothing. That's actually a rather hard lesson in dialogue to learn when the writer should shut their characters up because actions speak louder than words. So I go over a bunch of things in the introductory. I often take my cue from what the students say they hope to learn. They might say, well, I want to work on better plots. And I might say, what have you read lately? Unfortunately, these days, they may often say, I don't really read that much. And I say, well, we'll see if we can fix that. Because sure, you can get some stories from your own experience, but an awful lot of good plots come from reading, and that last thriller that you read, whether it's a lead child, whether it's an old Jean Le Carré, you have an improvement in mind, or you're going to mix and match there. And an awful lot of what you write. I mean, years ago, there was this library poster showing a young girl at her brain in cartoon fashion. And part of her was Nathaniel Hawthorne, and part of her was Zora Neale Hurston, and part of her was Hemingway, with the slogan, "You are what you read."
Mm-hmm.
And so I tell the students, one thing I can do when I know you better is prescribe certain books that you might want to check out. They are you, they're really you, and they're doing something that you might be interested in. Um, but yeah, even the first session, we start with something, some samples, and we take it apart, not in the literature class way, though I think that's great in its own direction, but rather, no, it's not what something means. That's more literature. But how does it mean that? Okay. So that if this is a story all about, let's say, oh, I don't know, let's say racial injustice, it's not an essay talking about the injustice. We have a brutal scene on the pavement. Okay. I don't have to editorialize. It's all there. And you have the crowd reaction. Okay. You don't want to lead the reader too much. The reader is not an idiot. Let her make up her own mind. In any event, we go through some of this stuff, but at least the first session, it's a free for all because I take my cue from them.
Okay. All right. I like that. And the idea too, that as a writer, to allow the audience to have some say in what they're reading.
Yeah.
So one example I had from one author, they came on and said, when I write, I'll say something like, I walked into my grandmother's kitchen. Now, I'm going to walk into my grandmother's kitchen as a reader, not specifically the grandmother's kitchen of the person writing.
Right.
And I'm going to put myself into my context and what color the kitchen is, what does it feel like, what's happening. It might be totally different than what the author had envisioned. So allowing me to put myself into the story, I find that I connect better with an author as a reader when I have some freedom and I'm not being kind of led like a child and given every specific detail and I have to match up with what's happening. Yeah. Give me a little room to play as a reader.
Yeah. I mean, again, to get technical, which I love to do, this is direct versus indirect characterization. Direct is she was short. Okay. He was ugly. The tree was 10 feet tall. That's okay. It's easy. But more interesting for me is a metaphor. Okay. Which is, or simile, okay. The baby was as tall as a fire hydrant, okay. The tree tended to look down on the humans. I'm making this up, so I'm doing it badly, but that's the idea. Yeah. And then beyond that, because that's still description, enacting it, okay. You show the little kid trying to reach her brother who's holding a toy, annoyingly over her head. You get that she's short. So yeah, I mean, it's not that one is better, but you're quite right with your kitchen scene. Let the reader introject themselves, do some work. They like that.
There's a little bit of buy-in that happens then from the reader's perspective as well, right? They feel like they're part of the story. I like that. Good. So you've taken us from our first day in class, which I love. What brings you joy as a teacher come the end of the session with your students? What do you see as a mile marker for you that says there's been a great connection? You see somebody progressing as a writer. What's kind of some indicators for you that these writers through this course with you are on the right path?
Again, another really good question. It's one, I have to ask myself. First of all, on the one hand, they're probably not going to write the great American novel, whatever that even is. But to answer your question, we can move any student from point A to point B, even if they're not that far, through the sheer practice effect. Through you read more, you write and write and write. Ray Bradbury has a quotation that I'm going to misquote slightly, but I love to spring it on students. He said at one point, you should write a short story every week. There's just no way you can write 52 bad short stories in a row. and he's right. So first of all, anyone improves. But yes, you can see, but it's funny, sure, a writer may be at a certain level, but they're not always so good at taking suggestions, and that can be a little frustrating. You generally knock them out of it, so to speak, once you have a whole group saying, Dave, we really like your dialogue, but you got to work on those endings. You got to work on those endings. I think the ending, about five people, and the writer starts to think, okay. And then we talk about endings, which is, it's got the whole weight of the story behind it. Play it light and with an action. Don't sum it up with, with a pink bow. We have advice. Oddly, though it's a pleasure to read their stuff, it's the most talented writers in class, and there are always some whom, unfortunately, I can help the least, though I can help them, because they're already there. They take things down in notebooks. They read eclectically, all over the place. They gain from what they read. They take notes. They think about how to improve things. What can I do for someone like that? Well, no one's writing's perfect. We point out issues. And one thing I do increasingly, particularly in this non-reading age, I say, have you ever read, Kelly Link? Have you ever read George Saunders? Have you ever read, Karen Russell? These are three short story writers I greatly admire. And if I recommend it enough times, like two or three, or send them sometimes that PDF saying, you got to read this.
Yeah.
They read it and it blows their mind. They didn't realize that someone out there was doing something the way they did, but maybe better. So that's the kind of help I can give. And they do improve. How much they improve is partly up to them and how much they put in it.
So from the switching gears from an author-focused conversation to more reader-focused for you, I'm here to build an audience for you to come and fall in love with your books. Your library of books is extensive. For a new reader coming to read your books, David, is there a recommended starting point for a new reader coming in and
Sure.
finding your work?
My greatest love, despite the fact, that I just came out with a fourth novel, has always been short stories. It's how I started. It's how I keep on returning to writing. And my first collection is called Laugh Track, and it came out years and years ago because I'm old, from the University Press of Mississippi. But my favorite still is, well, I'll see if I can find a copy here. Yeah. All right. So, story. This is My Date with Neanderthal Woman.
Okay.
And it's hard to see because it's not quite the cover we wanted. But my wife said, look, we need to do this right. And she wore a sort of a tank top, and she turned her back in the backyard, twined some chicken bones in her hair, and you have My Date with Neanderthal Woman. It's a collection of short stories. The title story, My Date with Neanderthal Woman, has been, I don't know, it won an award. It's been anthologized. It was even, God help me, optioned for a film that's never going to come out. But what I like about a lot of these stories is what's suggested in the title. Start with a loony premise and make it work. It's one of the things I talk about a lot in the workshop. That is, you can either start with something loony and proceed, or start with something logical and take it to an absurd extreme. Those work really well in the short form. And so I would recommend, My Date with Me. My first novel, well, it almost got me ridden out of town on a rail, but that's because I unwisely said it in the town where I was living at the time, Oxford, Mississippi. But it's called Flesh, if anyone's interested in a salacious tale. It is, let's see, with the elevator pitch is something like a tale of a sexual obsession that gets out of hand in a small southern town. And I'll leave it at that. It's not X-rated or anything like it.
Yeah.
But again, it starts with a premise. And those, I think, are my two favorites still. Although, as with many writers, they ask, what writing are you most in love with? And they'll say, the one I'm working on right now.
Right.
Where I went wrong, this latest novel, I am still quite fond of.
Excellent. Tell us more about that book.
Sure. It's a tale of a guy who is a total mess up. His name is Tony Mazza, M-A-Z-Z-A, not like matzah, the Passover food. He's Italian-American. He's very Jersey, South Jersey. And when we meet him, he's outside a county courthouse because he's facing facing real time. He stole an ambulance and drove it into another ambulance when he was working as a hospital orderly. Um, and he's facing all sorts of charges. And he thinks, yeah, was it the, Percocet he took or the fentanyl patch? Well, no, but that was really because his knee was acting up on him, his old trick knee. But the trick knee came about because of a bike crash years ago. So that's really responsible. He should never have worked in the bike shop anyway. And his mind goes back further and further in time, each chapter, to where he really might have gone wrong to set into, action, this chain of events that ends up with him outside the courthouse. I mean, if you want, I can read a section.
Oh,
to do what I mean.
love that.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So I'm going to try to link this up here. And would you prefer me to read from the screen or from? Yeah, I'll try to make eye contact and read this one.
Sure.
So,
yeah, it's great.
this is from the prologue. It's the year 2000, and this is Tony sort of mouthing off. It's all first person. Where did I go wrong? Where? What happened? And why me? As I stumble out of the Burlington County courtroom after the arraignment, the questions echo in my head as if I were three people talking to myself. How did I get slammed for grand theft auto, reckless endangerment, and driving under the influence? Third-degree lunacy, make that larceny, assaulting an officer, 2 or 3 other charges that might get me sent away to Rahway. I've seen too many movies that take place behind bars, and if even half of those scenes are true, I'm not going to last. Tony Mazza, hardened criminal. I try to see the funny side of life, but it's not always so easy. Hey, why did the picture go to jail? Because it was framed. Okay, maybe you've heard that one before. My son told it to me when he was 7. Anyway, not much comedy in my situation, unless you like it really dark. Considering all they threw at me, the arraignment was kind of short. 15 minutes in the courtroom, which I somehow thought would be nicer than a low ceiling and fluorescent lights. Smelled like an old basement. The judge, old guy in a black robe and tie, was seated at the bench with fingers laced together like some finger puzzle, leaning toward me as if he wanted to get a better look at the face of crime. Or maybe he was just pretending to be interested. The district attorney looked like a fat puma in a suit. Anthony Joseph Mazza, you are hereby accused of. Then came the list, with a pause after each charge and the question, how do you plead? It was repeated till I felt like saying, okay, all right, I get it. Can we just skip this? But I pled not guilty on the advice of my old friend Sandy Quaid, who showed up after the police took me into custody. Sandy's a short, stocky guy in a black leather jacket, a little intimidating, or at least he used to be. Hadn't seen him in a while, and he looked a little frayed around the edges. But he knew about what happened. I'm not sure how. Unless he got word from the lady I live with, Michelle, or did live with, up until the incident. Says she can't forgive me. Anyway, I've never really been sure how Sandy knows anything, and I've given up asking. Call him a fiend, friend, but for me he's always been a savior, mostly, and I ought to be grateful, I think. Sandy was the one who bailed me out. Said he'd find a lawyer to get me out of this mess. Made it sound like a game. We'll switch the rules on this, little bro, he told me. Since we go way back, though, I'm over 40 and Sandy should stop calling me that. No, he's not a lawyer. He ran a couple of businesses, including a bike store and a bar, then sort of branched out in a Jersey way. Not exactly the mob. He just knows a lot of people. He did come through, sort of. Guy named Salvatore Salambini, who sounded really smart over the phone, but who I haven't even met. Talked about a painkiller defense, like I didn't realize what I was doing under the influence of all those drugs. So I didn't even know where I went wrong. Also, leniency for a first offense. Sounded good. I was supposed to see him before the arraignment. He didn't show. Some of Sandy's connections are that way. Here tomorrow, but not today. I should have known better. I should have known a lot of things. Now it's 2:30 and I'm tired of waiting. I'm standing outside the courthouse, a prime piece of real estate with 4 columns to uphold the laws in the state of New Jersey. Might as well be waiting for the number 34 bus, since my car is a dead battery and I couldn't drive here. Loser. More than one person has called me that. I'm not a criminal. I pled not guilty because maybe I did some of that stuff, but I swear that's not me. I hope a trial can show that if Sal ever drops by. I refused a court-appointed lawyer when they asked. The preliminary hearing set for next Tuesday. But this guy Sal times two better show up soon. My neck still hurts from the accident. This part of the court case. Plus, my knee is bothering me from a bike crash years ago, and that's really what led to this whole situation. I lean against one of the middle pillars and think about what they call the events leading up to the incident. It's a long story, actually. And I'll stop there because the rest is the novel. But you can see what I mean. There's a guy who's second-guessing himself. He's in a bad spot. And he cannot figure out exactly where it went wrong because one incident leads to the other and the other. Like you and me, right?
Right.
It's natural.
Yeah.
So
What I love about all that, David, is the story, first of all. But I love when an author reads to us from their own book. Listening to you read that doesn't feel staged, doesn't feel forced. It just flows. And I can tell that every word matters for you.
well, it's worked and reworked. I'm not the kind of person who says, not a word out of place. Because anyone who writes knows, yeah, that came about by accident when I had a beer. That when I revised maybe badly. But you do work and rework it because the first draft often sucks. And you just have to have the courage to go forward and say, I've done this before. I'll make it better. So yeah, the prologue, if you want to call it that, I mean, in general with a novel, you start off with what you hope is a good opening. But then when you finish that novel, you better go back and work on it again because what you just wrote might change what's in the beginning. you know, no longer is he the same type of guy or whatever. So yeah, it's been reworked, but you're right. There's another reason why I like teaching. I like acting out parts.
Yeah, I can hear it in your voice, and it's a very intriguing passage to read for us, and I'm sure that's going to make a lot of people want to go buy the book and tell somebody as well, right?
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Oh.
I love it. Now, you were at a bookstore recently and had a chance to talk to readers and patrons of the store, and you had a great idea from your partner in life, as she is a great help for you as well as an author. But tell a little bit about being there in the store, what it felt like for you to talk to the readers, and then let's chat a little bit more about your idea that your wife came up with that you're using as well.
So yeah, I mean, I'm going to be doing a bunch of bookstores. I've done a few indies, but there's also a big Barnes and Noble, probably several in Philadelphia on Chestnut Street. And they said, would you be willing to come by and do an author signing? I like a reading too, but the idea was an author signing. I said, sure. Even though, as we've talked, I'm not from Philly and I worried about being the out-of-towner. That said, they did things right. I'm there at before the appointed time. I've got my poster-sized blow-up of a cover. I got a little round table. I've got books on it. I've got, and here's what you're talking about. I've got this card. On one side, it's postcard. It's the cover. I didn't even realize till later that the illustrator of the cover, and I think she did a really good job, this is upside down. This is the way an hourglass looks. I didn't even realize that. And it's done that way because this is Tony, the character, looking backwards as the chapters go further earlier into his life. So
That's
there's
interesting.
that. And you can really see that with a poster.
Yeah.
But the postcard on the other side, because this is where Tony went wrong, says, where did you go wrong? And no, there's not going to be a stamp here, but the idea is a postcard. You answer, and you'd send that to me at, www.davidgalef.com, the standard author website. And because I'm a creative writing teacher, I make this guarantee. I will, if you contact me, I will read it and get back to you. It's what I do. I'm happy to do that. That stopped a number of people in a good way. We started talking about writing. And the one thing that I should include, I almost forgot about this, but I think it was important. I offered where there's caramels, in a little bowl.
Yep.
I've been at this for a while.
You've
Um,
done this before,
and
yeah.
people come by. I said, "Would you like a caramel?" And I said, "They're good." Um, Almost everyone wants a caramel. Now, I am not a snake oil salesman. They were perfectly free to take a caramel and walk away, and a lot of people did, which is fine. That's what I brought them for. But some people stayed and talked, and then, I have this little spiel that I launch into. I'm not a salesman again, but when they ask about the novel, I'll tell them some of what I told you. But when I'm trying to point out what's a little odd about this novel, that it's told in chapters that move the protagonist further and further back in time, I say,
Yeah.
what's kind of cool about it, or agonizing, or both, is that you, as the reader, you see him in the year 2000. Then you see him in the year, I can't even remember now, like say 1996, where he's got a job as a bartender. Then you see him as a Parks and Rec guy. Then as a really unsuccessful third-rate real estate agent assistant. And each time, let's say he'll make a blunder when he's bartending. There's a couple of clients who are trying to, I'll just say that they're trying to interest him in an investment scheme. You know what's going to happen because you read the earlier chapters. You want to say, no, no, don't do that. I know what's going to happen. But I've told this to a lot of people. At this stage, at the bookstore, I actually get up and I say, and it's true. I say, I'm a bad bowler. Maybe you are too. But, your ball's rolling toward the gutter.
Yeah.
It's already left your hand a second ago. It's too late to do anything. That doesn't matter. You still go like that,
Yeah, yeah.
trying with body English to nudge it back into the lane. It's not going to work. And that, I say, is the effect I want from the reader. And it's at that point that a bunch of people picked up the novel and started flipping through it. So I saw books and I had fun.
It's interesting. Where did the original idea come from for Where I Went Wrong?
Yeah. There are, again, I'm on the one hand, a working fiction writer, but also a quote literary scholar. There are precedents. One that people think of a lot is Time's Arrow by Martin Amis, where the narrative goes backwards, although it does magic tricks that I don't do. There's another one called Morning Light by Charles Baxter, where the chapters sort of go back. Since I'm an old fantasy and science fiction fan, there's a Damon Knight short story, at one point kind of pretentiously called, before it was retitled, Backward O Time. So I like that idea, but also I had come to a stage in life where I began to second guess myself a lot as to where I went this way, what caused it, what caused that. And I thought that would be a cool structure for a novel. And the problem then was you can come up with a cool, structure or premise like that. I needed a plot. And I know I gave him a series of bum jobs that sort of structured the plot, although it takes him to high school and earlier. And then, and this is the real issue, and you heard it with Tony talking off there, I needed a character. I needed a voice that could go on and complain about anything and anyone in what I hope was an amusing sort of Jersey kind of way. The guy's working class. His father was a bit of an alkie. He has a tendency to that himself. He's been through a couple of marriages. Who was this guy? I will tell you frankly, he's not me. And though obviously, there might be something of him and me. And I had to work on that for a long time. And then I finally got a mix. But yeah, this idea of tracing failure further and further back. Although I gotta say, it can be a feel-good book because I don't want to spoil any endings, but things turn out better.
So would you be spoiling the ending or the starting?
Let's just let me get rather uncharacteristically abstract and evasive here and say
good.
the book is not a downer. It is in fact in some ways a testament to how to pick yourself up.
Good.
You're down.
Well, I think we need a lot of that in our world today. That's a good timely thing to talk about.
So
Okay. All right. Yeah, I do love the cover. Now that you talk about that, it is very interesting that it is upside down compared to the story.
yeah.
That's really unique. Wow. Did,
Well, as I
did you
say,
say? Did you give her direction for that?
no,
To
you
do
see,
that? No.
this is Regal House Publishing, and I'm very fond of them. It's an all-woman press. It's indie, regularly listed as one of the best in the U.S. It got the cover of Publishers Weekly a while back, and they do in-house book cover illustration. Um, it's not that uncommon. You volunteer a few ideas. You may suggest, a couple of images, but in the end, they come up with what they come up with. And I like this. I
Yeah,
made no objections at all.
it's very smart. I think that's really, really bright. Um, so for the reader, then, who would you say is your ideal reader for the book?
It's a good question. And a bunch of pros, I'm a pro too, but at a different level, have said, who are you pitching the book to? And I probably should have a better answer. I was looking for a general reader, but I'm not sure they exist anymore. um, I think anyone, well, it's funny. The blurb at the top is from a friend of mine, Jacob M.F.A, who's very well published. I recommend him unreservedly. And he just says, a wry masterpiece and a must read for anyone who has screwed up royally. So I don't know if that makes an answer to your question, but
There you
for
go.
people who are wondering, what's going on here, because this is sort of an answer, but as we discussed earlier, it's not an explanation; it's a drama. You can get stuff from this. Maybe this is partly your life.
Hmm.
A reader is someone who's looking for an absorbing read with a sort of a jokey guy you wouldn't mind spending a few hours with.
And that whole "how did I get here" reverse engineering
Yeah.
of your situation. I like the premise.
Well, it goes back. I mean, in high school, he hangs out with this one bad friend of his. But then in middle school, there's another issue. His father kind of plays around and also drinks too much. And then he's got this he's got a kid sister named Angela. And I should really speak more, I guess, in more of a past tense, because Angela's not there anymore. And she disappeared one day and never came back. And to some extent, despite my point about the novel goes back and back, it does. But somewhere in the sort of second half, she's gone. And it blows a hole in his life and his family's life. And it's the one incident that he doesn't endlessly think about where he went wrong quite, or he's repressed it or whatever. It's the one exception. And to that extent, it's a bit of a mystery, though, again, that too, there's some answers at the end. That's something I really had to work on because the idea of someone disappearing and not showing up again is just devastating.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
I didn't mean to ruin the
Yeah,
comic
no, I know.
aspect to it. It's still there, but
It's interesting that we are the summation of everything that's happened to us,
yeah.
right? And that whole "why is me? Why is this happening to me now?"
Yeah.
And if we could be reflective, we might see something. Maybe there's a pattern. Maybe there's something that's happened
Right.
that we have suppressed or we don't think about often. But it is an indication of maybe how and why we're on the road we're on right now.
I think that's quite true. And then the second step, not that I'm a therapist, is
Right.
well, I think that this realization is key. But then the second step is, okay, what can I do about it?
Mm-hmm.
Because to some extent, character is destiny. In other words, you do this over and over again, even though you know it's wrong, because it's you. But can people
Yeah.
remake themselves? To some extent, I think. And realization is the first step. And then trying to do something about it. And it may not work the first or 15th time, but you keep on trying. So that's an area where I'm kind of hopeful. In my life, in your life, in the life of our cat who keeps on nipping the wrong stranger at times. I see if we tell him enough times this is wrong, maybe he'll get it. We're working on it.
We've turned into a cat podcast just like that.
Sorry,
And I love
I didn't
it.
mean to do
That's
that.
good. No, my cat does the same thing. I'm like, how can I fix this? No, it's good. So do you think there's going to be a kind of an addition to this book maybe in the future where we hear more about this character going into the future maybe? Or what do you think?
By the end, you do end with a sense of futurity. I
Okay,
don't
good.
like leaving readers hanging. Um,
Okay.
but I mean, if you mean a sequel, probably not, because I have another project
Okay.
in mind I'm working on it. That's got nothing to do with this. This is my fourth novel. And the first novel, as I say, was this Southern town obsession. The second novel was about an expat living in Japan who comes home to weird circumstances. Third novel was about the intersection of a decaying suburban marriage and a child molester.
Hmm.
That actually was a Kirkus Best Books of the Year. It's in a lot of libraries. That took a lot of research and was unpleasant at times. But my only point is, I'm not. I sometimes wish I were the kind of novelist who does the same kind of novel
Right.
over and over because I know my fans like it. Um, I don't want to bore myself or my readers, and so
Right.
every novel is different.
That's exactly the answer I was hoping for the readers that are listening. Is it one style, one person, one character through everything? You have so much variety to what you
Sure.
do that I think it brings in people and gives them a chance to sample many, many different styles and different stories. I love that idea.
Well, F. Scott Fitzgerald said years ago, he was talking about, maybe a life story of him. And he said, maybe inaccurately, but he said, there's never been a successful biography of a novelist. If he's any good, he's too many people. Uh, and again, as with the
Hmm.
Gore Vidal quote, I don't think that's necessarily true, but I like the idea of it. And that's one reason I think to write novels, you can explore a whole life and it doesn't have to be yours. It's a merciful escape at times.
Hmm.
So,
I like it. Okay, so David, for listeners and authors who are here with us, they're curious to find out more about you, your journey. They want to meet you in public and get one of the postcards.
okay.
Your website, let's talk about that again. And I have
hmm
a question to wrap up our conversation at the end here. But again, take us to your website and what we're going to find when we get there.
Um, it is, I mean, it's a professional website. I hired someone to do it. Um, the difference is that I think my strength, having been a shameless eclectic or hack for so many years and written so many different directions, is the depth of the bookshelf. So
Yeah.
there's a menu on top where you've got works, and I've got a number of different books. Because this novel's just out, the landing page, I believe, I really should know this better,
Yep.
is this fourth novel.
Yep.
If you click on the right links, there's an excerpt, there's ordering information, etc. But there's also, my record, a bit of life history, a photo that looks better than I look, and so on. Well, that's almost required, right?
Yeah.
Um, and links for further exploration, whether if you want to check out a book or whatever. And also, and I think that's important, you mentioned it, contact information. I want to hear
Right.
from people. And one of the ways I built a program in creative writing at Montclair State, and it sounds simple, is I got back to people. People contacted me and I got back to them. You have no idea how people appreciate that. And the same is true of my website. If people contact me, I will get back to them. If they have questions, if they want to, purchase something, I believe in staying in touch, and I think that helps.
My only caution to anybody coming to your website, if you have one of those little wheels on your mouse where you can scroll with the wheel, make sure your fingers exercise before you get here. There's so many things to scroll through. And when I clicked on your other writings, David, I'm like scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. It just never ends. So there is so much here for you as a reader to fall in love with. So definitely go to David's website. There'll be a link in the show notes. Go there, check it out. All the books are there, everything's there, and the events are also there as well. So, hey, David might be in your neighborhood, and you need to go shake a hand and get a
Um,
postcard.
I should point out that if I'm not in your neighborhood or anywhere near, um, you're welcome to issue me an invitation, make a suggestion about a bookstore or festival near you. Again, I follow up. I I'm not just trying to sell a book, as I mentioned in the bookstore. I like this.
Right.
It's a kind
Yeah.
of teaching. I am, as they used to say, a minor league player suddenly in the majors. Happy to be here.
There you go. It's great. David, let's wrap us up again.
Okay.
So for the authors that are listening, let's honor them one more time. They're here, they're inspired, they want to write, and they're trying to find their voice as an author. They have all of this collection of authors that influence them, that they love, they know, and they've read their works, but they're trying to find their own unique way of telling their story. If I was in your class and I put up my hand and asked, David, how do I find my voice? What would your answer be for me as a new author?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a good question. It's asked a lot. I have to say it has no one set or easy answer. Here are some answers. One is, sure, your voice is yours, but you may be writing, bad imitation Hemingway or the last poet you read. Would you please read a lot? And your voice eventually becomes a sort of echo chamber of things you've read, what your mother told, the way your mother speaks to you when you're upset, the preoccupation with, I'm making this up, a certain darkness or twilight that you've always had. It's in a lot of your work. It's an amalgam. It's emerging. It's not a pure, clear, simple voice. It's a kaleidoscope, and that's fine. But if you want to richen the mixture, you need to read more, you need to write more, and it slowly emerges until finally I read, a Dave Campbell short story. I've read enough of them.
Yeah.
And the fifth time I'm opening the pages of a Campbell story, I think, I know who this guy is.
Yeah.
Because you've got certain preoccupations that you've successfully dramatized. In other words, it's not something, I hate to say, that just emerges naturally. You work at it. It's a performance of sorts, an author's voice, as opposed to the voice I use to order, a burger and fries. And when it's engaging, there's nothing like it. And it's worth working toward. You do it by practice, you do it by reading, and thinking, here I am speaking to the reader, what will keep them hooked? And that's your job.
Somebody told me a long time ago, David, live life like you have that article of clothing that everything just naturally tends to stick to. Cat hair, fluff. Oh, and you're like, why is the thing sticking to my shirt? And let life stick to you.
Sure.
Go out into the world and just collect life. And all those things become inspiration moments for you that cling to you. It's like something would cling to your clothes. And those could become seeds for a story or an example or something that you're going to write because you just let life cling to you. And I'm like, what a good visual as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's certainly the way to gather things. And then at some point, because you're an artist, you have to start the process of selection. This clung to me. I'm not quite sure what this clung to me. I'll use it later. But this thing I'm going to use right now for a piece I'm working on and include it with this belt that seems to have attached itself around my waist and one of these shoes. And you come up with something cool that's recombinant. But again, art is selection and you choose at some point after doing what you say, which is to get all sorts of things gathered together.
Be inspired, listen to others, read books, listen to great teachers, listen to podcasts, meet authors in a bookstore. All of these things kind of work together, right? For the good.
I'm always happy to talk.
Excellent. David, thank you so much for being here. Everyone, please go support David. You get the most recent book he has out now, but also please go back and look at all the other books he has to offer. Leave a detailed review where you buy your book, in person, online, wherever it is. Let people know why you love this book so much, and then tell somebody. Tell somebody who you know, hey, I just got this great book from David. I know you're going to love it, and share the knowledge with other people so that more people will come and discover David as well. David, thank you so much for being here.
I'm grateful for any support.
Excellent. Thanks, David.
Thanks.
Hey, as we exit the podcast, as we leave out the door, I know the car's running. Somebody's eagerly waiting for you to get out there and go home. As we exit the podcast, I just want to ask, if you have time, I would truly appreciate it. We ask for you to do this for our authors. When you buy your book, we ask you to leave a review. Why? Because it means a lot to the author and it tells other people that the book is great. Now, you don't hear me ask for this very often, so I'm going to do this here because we're friends, right? You and I are friends. I would love a review of this show because it'll tell more people to come and listen to this podcast. So if you have Apple, wherever you're listening, there's probably some way to give a star rating or leave a comment about the show. YouTube, you can always leave comments on YouTube. Every episode's there. I'd love to hear from you. Leave a review, leave a rating, and share this with somebody. That's probably the best way to grow the podcast, is for you to share it. And by listening to the end of the episode, like you're doing right now, tells all the apps this is a good podcast. So thank you for already helping me by listening to this part. But go leave a review. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And thank you for being part of the podcast family. Take care.